What's going on and how's it going? In this training, we are going to be covering the 7 movement patterns. These are the 7 foundational and functional movement patterns. Every single thing that your body does is one of these things. When you're carrying your groceries, you're training your core. When you're walking up the stairs, that's an example of a knee dominant movement. When you're sitting back down onto the couch, that's an example of a hip dominant movement. When you are putting something on the shelf, that's an example of a vertical push, right? Or maybe when you're pulling down a garage, that's an example of a vertical pull, right? These are the main and primary movements that your body goes through from a functional sense every single day, right? These are this is what your body does. It pushes, it pulls, right, through vertical, horizontal, or through your lower body, or it stabilizes through the core. So everything you do in your entire life and everything you do at the gym, not every single thing in your everyday life, but most functional movements translate to one of these 7 movements. And also every single thing you do in the gym, right? Bench press, boom, horizontal push. Pull up, boom, vertical pull. Dumbbell overhead press, vertical push. So everything can kind of be categorized into these. And as these are very functional movement patterns, right, things that your body should be able to do with load, it makes sense to keep these in mind with program design and programming to make sure that your body's training all of the things in the gym that it does in everyday life, again, to make sure that you're functional and strong in your everyday life. So what I typically recommend is if you are strength training 1 time a week, it should be a full body lift that includes all of these. Like, you shouldn't be thinking you can be, but I would advise to think 7 movement patterns, right? Rather than thinking shoulders and biceps, right? Think, did you include everything that is functional to the human body that you need? So if you're exercising 1 time a week, I recommend hitting all of these. If you're exercise or strength training specifically, if you're strength training twice a week, I recommend hitting all of these. I would recommend 2 full body sessions if you are only lifting 2 times. Now, if you're lifting 3 times or more, that's where you can start to do split routine, where you can do push days, where maybe you're doing horizontal push and vertical push, or pull days where you're doing horizontal pull, vertical pull, or maybe you want to do upper lower, or maybe you want to do buys and tries, chest, shoulders, you want to do kind of more split routine. I would say that's only if you're working out and you're strength training 3 or more times a week. If you're strength training twice a week, I would highly recommend it be twice a week, and it include all of these 7 major movement patterns in your lift. So we're just going to break these down, each of these. They are as simple as they sound. It is not a complex concept. So you know, you're going into the gym, you've got 45 minutes, you need to hit full body. You're going to hit one of each of these movements, and then maybe if you know you're weaker in one of them, maybe you hit twice in that, or you're working on specifically gaining muscle mass or gaining strength through a specific movement pattern or muscle group, then you kind of hit that twice, right? And don't get me wrong, muscle groups are associated with these, right? Think horizontal push. That's core, chest, and abs, right? Your core musculature. So these are associated with muscle groups, but training for functionality, right? If you're training 2 times a week is recommended. So let's break these down. Again, like I said, they're pretty self-explanatory. They're pretty straightforward. What they are, what they sound like and seem like is exactly what they are. But I'll walk through and kind of give you some examples here so you know what you can be doing for your workouts and how to make sure that you are hitting all of your major movement patterns. So a horizontal pull is just that, push, sorry. A horizontal push is where you are you're pushing away from your body, right? That can be everything from a barbell bench press where you're pushing away, but it can also be a push-up where you're also pushing away. So examples of horizontal pushes are barbell bench press, a dumbbell chest press, push-ups, or a cable machine chest press. Next up, you have the horizontal pull, which again is exactly as it sounds. It's the exact opposite. A horizontal pull is where you are pulling towards yourself. So examples of horizontal pulls are cable rows, barbell rows, dumbbell rows, and plank rows. If you don't know what any of these are, you can just open up into YouTube, and like Google what they are, and it will show you, or YouTube what they are. Next up is a vertical push. Again, it is exactly as it seems. Vertical push is pushing anything up overhead. And also remember that when it comes to vertical, it can get kind of a little bit tricky and a little bit confusing, because if you're changing the orientation of your body, then it can kind of get confusing. But with a vertical push, just think of anything where it's not in relation to what is actually up. It's what is actually up for your body. Okay. So a vertical push is examples of that are a dumbbell press, a barbell press, a landmine press, or a clean and press, which is more of like, you think like traditional, like CrossFit movement or powerlifting. Next up is a vertical pull, which again is vertical to the anatomy of the body, not vertical based on up, down, side, right? It's vertical based on the anatomy of the body. So vertical pulls, examples of that are pull-ups, lat pull down, tricep pull down, dumbbell pull over. Okay. Next up, knee dominant exercises. Knee dominant exercises, the difference between knee and hip in a knee dominant movement, that's where your knee is the prime mover, like that joint is the prime mover. So examples of that are lunges, step ups, barbell squats, or sumo squats. And then hip dominant is the next one. Hip dominant examples are your dumbbells, your hip thrusts, pretty much anything where you're hinging through the hip as the primary mover. So deadlift, hip thrust, glute bridge, or good mornings. And then lastly is core. Core can be broken down into 4 components. For core training, we have anti-rotation training, anti-lateral flexion, anti-extension, and anti-flexion. Anti-rotation is basically means the opposite, right? Opposing rotation. So rotation through the torso. We have to think of our core. Think of your core of everything from like pubic bone to shoulders. Your core is everything that's in between that, right? Pubic bone to shoulders. It's not just your transverse abdominis, which is the traditional 6-pack abs that you think of when you think of core training. Your core is everything. Your core is your obliques. Your core is your back. Your core is your glutes. So the function of the core, and a lot of times people think core, like abs, is just crunches, but we want to train for functionality, as we've been talking about. And training for functionality means you are training your core to be able to withstand load and impact in its core function, which is to protect the spine. And in order to protect the spine, that means your core needs to stay stable and it needs to stay where it is, right? So anti-rotation means you are resisting external force, or you're resisting rotation. So an example of this is, and again, thinking functionally, if you are walking your dog and you're holding your dog with the leash, and then all of a sudden the dog yanks to go chase a chipmunk and you twist your body, right? If you don't have a strong core, and this is an example I actually have been giving since, I've been giving this example for so long, and if you don't have a strong core, that dog is going to pull you and you're going to rotate through your core. You can obviously pull something in your muscles, but you can also then injure your spine, right? But if you have a strong core, you're going to stay perpendicular. You're going to stay forward. You're going to stay stable through the hips, stable through the shoulders, because you're able to brace through the core and resist that rotation. And I was going to say, this actually happened to one of my clients. She pulled a muscle in her back because she wasn't able to activate and recruit her abs and stabilize through her core to protect her spine and protect her back. So anti-rotation is your ability to resist rotation, right? Anti-lateral flexion. So lateral meaning to the side and flexion meaning bending, right? So your body's ability to resist lateral flexion, bending to the side, right? An example of this in everyday life is your groceries. Let's just say you're carrying 30 pounds of groceries in one side. If you don't have a strong core, you're going to to cave forward. You're going to round through the shoulders, and you're not going to be able to have good posture and keep your shoulders up and keep your shoulders locked back down, and keep your head up, right? Keeping good posture. And again, you can pull something, and you can compress your spine. So anti-lateral flexion, that's your body's ability to resist, right? Let's just call it like compressing down to the side, and being able to keep your body up. So I was going to give you examples as we were going, but example of an anti-rotation would be a side plank or a Pallof press where you are perpendicular to the line of pull, resisting that line of pull. Anti-lateral flexion, an example of that is like a suitcase carry. When you see people like holding kettlebells or dumbbells or plates and walking or doing marching or anything like that, that's an example of anti-lateral flexion. And then lastly, you have anti-flexion and anti-extension. That's your body's ability to resist force to fall forward and resist force to fall backwards, right? Of course, we want to be able to access, on a side note, we want to be able to access a proper range of motion through all of these, through rotation, through lateral flexion, through extension and flexion. Our spine has degrees of mobility to do all of these things because, again, that's within its function. But we don't want it to go so far or so far under load where it's going to compress your spine or irritate your spine, right? So anti-flexion and extension, that's your body's ability to, we have here an example, it would be a plank. It's basically just from both sides, front and back, your body's ability to, again, keep tall posture and keep your body still, right? In this example, if she didn't have a strong core, her body would essentially concave downwards. And then the other way, if you, the other way on your backside, right, would be like an example of like a leg lower or something like that. So core training, a lot of times people just think of like doing crunches and doing crunches and doing crunches, which is just putting you into flexion, 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 which again, your body should have that range of motion to go into flexion, but you're not really functionally trained. You might get a burn again in your transverse abdominis, but you're not training your core for its natural function, which again is to resist rotation, resist lateral flexion, and resist bending forwards and backwards under a heavy load, and being able to keep tall and stable, and confined and protect your back muscles, your spine, etc. So that is it for your training for the 7 movement patterns. Again, you want to make sure whatever split you're doing, whether you're doing 2 full bodies, whether you're doing push days, pull days, whether you're doing upper, lower, whether you're doing split routines by muscle groups, you want to make sure that somewhere in your training throughout the week, you are making sure you have a balanced load of each of these: horizontal push-pull, vertical push-pull, hip dominant, knee dominant, and core. And not only just core training, again, not only just anti-flexion, but also training anti-lateral flexion and anti-rotation as well. So I will see you in the next training. In the next training, we're going to start to dive into scheduling and how to make sure you're keeping a realistic schedule, an attainable schedule, how to scale up, where to start with whatever level you're at, and really just how to build a balanced schedule to make sure that you're getting, just as we started the other last training out with, making sure that you're getting both what you need and what you want into your training program.